Hey, welcome back. When you think of the number 55 in a Charger uniform, obviously Junior Seau, the name that is mentioned, but now there's a new book out called Finding Frank about the other star Charger player to wear the double fives, and that would be Frank Buncombe. It's a story told through the experiences of a former Charger ball boy. His name is Buzz Ponce.
Frank Buncombe died in September of 1969, and the day that I found out about his death was shattering to me, because I had a real close relationship with Frank. And I made a vow to myself that at some point in my life, I'm going to write a story about Frank Buncombe.
Buzz began a relationship with Frank Buncombe back in 1965. Maybe call it the linebacker meets the kid.
I was an avid Chargers fan, and I got this opportunity to be a ball boy, and I jumped at it. And the very first day of being on the job as a ball boy for the Chargers in Escondido, I was wandering through the parking lot, going over to the locker room area, and some players pulled up, and Frank was one of them in a car. And several players jumped out of Frank's car, and there was an immediate connection when I saw Frank Buncombe, and I knew who he was because I was such a Chargers fan. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and for whatever reason, and I can't really explain it well enough to this day, but there was this immediate connection, and he said a few things to me, and I was really taken aback. Why is this Charger star taking the time to say anything to me? My very first day on the job as a ball boy for the Chargers. But he put his arm around me, looked at me, talked to me a little bit, and said, "Follow me, I'm going to take care of you." And I knew him very well from that day until he died 4 years later.
Now, one of the stories Buzz writes about in this book is how Frank would attend football games at Orange Glen High School.
And it struck me then, and it has always struck me through the years. This was a magnificent personality, I thought then, and I certainly think now, to take the time to spend with a group of kids and try to mold them into the right direction.
And imagine this. Frank went over to Buzz's house for dinner, the player dining with a ball boy. And of course, Buzz says that act of kindness won his mother over.
And this was her first experience interacting with an African American. And she was taken aback. And it was a very awkward situation at that time. But Frank won her over. A week or so after that meeting, he began writing my mother letters, just thanking her for inviting him out to the house and saying such things. He's trying to take good care of her son and trying to mold him into the type of person that he knew that she wants me to grow up to be.
I'm sure Charger fans know this, but Frank Buncombe is honored in the Chargers Ring of Fame. And as Buzz points out, not only was he a good man off the field, he was just as good on it.
He made the American Football League All-Star team, which back in those days they called them All-Stars rather than All-Pros for the AFL. He made 3 of those teams. He played in the 1963 championship team for the Chargers. And he went on to have a great 8-year career. He's in the Chargers Hall of Fame. But if you were to ask most fans today, who was Frank Buncombe? Or who was, even a better question, I think, who was the original number 55 for the San Diego Chargers? I would bet heavily that if you ask 1,000 people, not more than a handful would say Frank Buncombe. They just don't remember Frank. They didn't remember Frank well quickly after his death. And that's always bothered me, and that's another reason that I wanted to get his story out and let people know that there was somebody else other than Junior Seau, as great as Seau was.
So what would Buzz like his readers to take out of this book?
Pretty simple. I would just like people to have a name recognition when you're asked, or if you're ever asked, or you might want to throw the idea out, hey, other than Junior Seau, who wore number 55 for the Chargers, I'd like people to have an understanding that there was another player. His name was Frank Buncombe.
All right, if you have a good story to tell, contact us, email it. The email address you see right there on your screen. We'll do our best to make sure it's part of our Sports Extra feature of the week segment.